It started with a rusted pickup and a hand-carved ring. Emily thought she married a broke carpenter with a gentle heart. But one night, she found a luxury electric coupe hidden under a tarp and a legal document with her name tied to a corporate merger. When she asked who he really was, his voice dropped to a whisper. "Before you, I was someone else." But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Narrative tone, reflective warmth tinged with foreshadowing. The tone should evoke emotional intimacy and trust in the beginning of a romance, while subtly hinting that not all is as it seems. Emily Barnes had grown up learning that love didn't come with packaging. It arrived in cracked boots at the door, or in the form of someone who fixed things quietly without being asked. She never believed in diamonds. She believed in someone staying past sundown to finish a job, in voices that never raised and promises that sounded like breath instead of thunder. That's what made Cole Anders feel like more than luck. He felt like something earned. He wasn't flashy. His tools were older than her truck, and his laugh came slow, like it didn't get used often. When he said he worked with wood, she believed it. His hands were proof, thick-knuckled, nicked at the joints, palms like old leather worn thin. The kind of hands you could trust not to let go. Emily hired him to rebuild the pantry shelves, and when he touched the grain, it was with reverence. Like he wasn't just shaping boards, but giving something dignity back. Every nail was precise. Every angle measured twice. He never spoke about his past, just said he moved around a lot and liked quiet towns. She didn't press. In her world, you earned someone's story the way you earned someone's love. Slowly, without demand. As the weeks turned, she noticed the little things. How he never checked his phone. How he always carried a folded piece of paper in his back pocket, but never read it. How his eyes scanned the horizon every time a new car passed. But those were footnotes, not warnings. Not then. She remembered the way he stood in the doorframe, brushing sawdust from his arms, eyes soft but unreadable. The way he ran his thumb along her jaw after a long day. The way he asked before kissing her, every single time. Like he still wasn't sure he deserved her. On Christmas Eve, under the crooked light bulbs she'd strung around her grandmother's porch, he knelt in the snow with a box no bigger than a matchbook. Inside was a hand-carved ring, warm from his pocket, shaped smooth from walnut and sealed with beeswax. There was no speech, no big ask. Just a quiet, "I want to stay." And she said yes. Not because of what he gave her, but because of who he was when he had nothing. A simple man, with splintered hands, and a truth still buried under wood and winter silence. Narrative tone, tense and intimate, with a mounting sense of unease and betrayal. The tone should reflect Emily's quiet disorientation as the world she trusted begins to shift beneath her, yet still preserve the emotional closeness that makes her confrontation with Cole so powerful. It started with the kind of silence that doesn't belong in a marriage, the kind that grows not from comfort but from omission. Emily had once thought she understood the rhythm of her days with Cole, the way he moved through their cabin like a man unlearning urgency, the way his touch lingered on the grain of finished wood, the way he looked at her like he'd never known a life that held space for peace. She thought he had chosen her, and the life they were building, not as a fallback, but as a refuge. But small things started to feel out of place. The first time was almost forgettable. An envelope without a return address slid under the door on a Thursday afternoon. She opened it while folding laundry. Inside, stark legal print, her name and Cole's tied together in language she didn't understand. A corporate merger, financial language buried in clauses and subclauses. She brought it to him in the workshop, heart thudding. He barely looked at it. "Junk mail," he said, wiping sawdust from his hands. Leftover from an old identity. I had a past, Em. Doesn't mean it still matters. She wanted to believe that, but it clung to her like varnish on the edge of memory, dry to the touch, but never truly set. Then came the phone call. She walked in from feeding the hens and heard him speaking, soft but not intimate, clipped, sharp, each word precise, the way a man sounds when stakes are high. He hung up too quickly, voice dropping an octave when he noticed her. "Friend from before," he offered, too casual. "Old mess I thought was cleaned up." She nodded, but inside a question began to gnaw. What mess? Then she found the car. She hadn't meant to find it. She was helping their neighbor, an older man who couldn't clear his garage anymore. The tarp was old, sun-bleached. She pulled it off, expecting rust, maybe forgotten furniture. Instead, a black electric coupe, gleaming, silent, a spaceship among pickup trucks. She opened the door. The interior lit up with a low chime. Registration papers, his name, Cole Anders. Same handwriting, same man. But not her husband. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch with the wind biting her ankles, waiting for him to come home. And when he did, smelling of cedar and cool air, she asked the question that had been burning its way through her since that envelope landed on her table. "Who are you, Cole?" He stood in the doorway, shadow slicing his face in half. For a moment he looked younger, sadder. Then came the answer. Quiet. Unsteady. "Before you, I was someone else. And that life's trying to pull me back." And just like that, the cracks beneath the grain split wide. Narrative tone, emotional and grounded, with a quiet sense of revelation and awakening. The tone should reflect Emily's initial heartbreak, but evolve into something steadier, something that mirrors her inner strength surfacing through the shock. The house was too still. No footsteps creaked across the old floorboards. No kettle hissed from the stovetop. No scent of sawdust or pine oil lingered in the corners of the workshop. Emily moved through it like a shadow, arms wrapped around herself, sleeves still damp from last night's tears. She called his name once. Soft, a question rather than a plea, but she already knew. Cole was gone. On the kitchen table sat a folded envelope with her name scrawled across the front in his handwriting, steady, practical, and unmistakably his. Beside it, a single sheet of paper. The corner bore the seal of a private bank she didn't recognize, and her name was on it. Not as a secondary signer, not as an emergency contact. As equal owner. The balance at the bottom made her breath catch. 8 figures. She opened the letter with fingers that trembled, not from greed but from disbelief. "I didn't mean to lie. I meant to disappear." The words hit harder than any scream could have. There was no flourish, no apology drenched in manipulation. Just confession, bare and unguarded. Colton Avery. She read the name again. And again. Then read the rest. The boy next door, Carpenter, was a ghost. A billionaire in exile. A man who had once sat at the helm of the country's fastest-growing cybersecurity firm before walking away from it all. He told her in ink what he hadn't dared say aloud. How his own brother leaked trade secrets. How the media turned his silence into spectacle. How investors fought over him like vultures before he chose to vanish. And how somewhere, between hiding and healing, he found her. The letter didn't beg for forgiveness. It offered her the truth, unfiltered and unadorned. The account was in both their names. His cabin, his land, everything, was now hers too. His final words were clear. "They're sniffing around again. And you don't deserve what comes with me. So, I'm taking it with me. but if you want to find me, you can." Emily set the letter down and pressed both hands to the table's edge. She wasn't angry. Not in the way she expected. She was hurt, yes, raw, exposed. But underneath it all, beneath the ache, beneath the awe, was something far older. Resolve. Because she hadn't built her life on illusions. She'd built it on grit, on quiet strength, on never walking away when things got hard. And maybe he was trying to protect her. But he'd underestimated the one thing that didn't come in a trust fund. Her will. Narrative tone. Earnest, redemptive, emotionally intimate. This final part should carry the tone of earned hope, a blend of realism and emotional closure. The language should feel warm but unvarnished, driven by the grit and grace of two people choosing each other again, now with nothing left to hide. The snow was heavier and bolder than she remembered from the travel brochures. It blanketed the hills like silence and crusted the roadside fences in layers of white dust and forgotten seasons. Emily's boots crunched over the frozen path that wound around the edge of the woods, each step heavier than the last. Not from fatigue, from everything she carried inside. She saw him before he saw her. Bent over a frame of pressure-treated beams, gloved hands bracing a level against the frost-bitten lumber. The rented cabin behind him looked temporary, its windows lit with soft lamplight, its porch barely wide enough to stand on. But what he was building in the clearing, it was something more. A home, maybe, or the outline of one. Emily stopped a few yards back, pulled her coat tighter, then said loud enough to slice through the wind, "You don't get to disappear, not if you meant what you said." Colton froze. The level slipped from his hand and hit the beam with a dull thud. When he turned, it wasn't surprise in his eyes. It was recognition, like he'd been hoping she might come, but never dared to believe she would. He didn't run to her. She didn't cry on cue. Instead, they stood in the snow like the strangers they'd been, and the partners they still were. Then they argued. About trust, about fear, about what it meant to give someone your truth and expect them to hold it. They cried, laughed in that trembling way you only do when grief and relief collapse into one. And somewhere in between, they found their answer. They chose each other again. Not the fantasy, not the disguise, each other. 6 months later, the foundation became a headquarters, a modest startup. Just desks, old laptops, and purpose. Emily handled operations, emails, logistics, training schedules. Colton coded through the nights. Together they trained veterans from remote towns in cybersecurity, paid them well, gave them dignity, donated what they didn't need. The press called it redemption, a comeback, a billionaire's new leaf. But that wasn't it. Colton hadn't needed saving. He needed to be seen. And Emily, steady, stubborn, bright as morning Emily, had seen him before the world even knew what it was looking at. And this time, she didn't just say yes, she stayed.